Leaf Village had been attacked by the nine-tailed fox, escaping its Jinchuriki while she had been weak while in labor. In the last efforts to save the village, the fourth Hokage and his wife had sealed the beast in their newborn son, continuing the tradition of the Uzumaki carrying the nine tails. In their last moments before dying, they tried to tell their son how much they loved him. The previous Hokage watched the scene before sadly, as he decided he would have to retake the seat of leader in their village. It had been days as the villagers and shinobi alike worked on repairing the village. Sarutobi had agreed to watch over the infant for some time until they figured out how to handle the situation and how to have him cared for properly. A knock on the door sounded and the Hokage called for the person to come in, surprised to find spiky silver hair. Kakashi stood before the Sandaime, his mask hiding most of the tear stains that still wet his face. He was still dealing with the loss of his own sensei, the last member of his team. The last person that had come to mean something to him. Even his wife, who had become important to Kakashi by extension, was gone as well. At first, he thought of going back to Anbu, even though Minato had suggested he take a break before the attack. He just wanted to escape, to throw himself into his duty as a ninja. He wasn't supposed to let himself feel these emotions. But this was Minato-sensei, the person who had looked after him for years, and even acted almost like a father to him. He couldn't just bury this one so easily. Hiruzen Sarutobi had resumed as Hokage after the death of his successor. He watched the young boy in front of him, knowing he had been his student. That his whole team was gone now, and he could only be even more traumatized now than he already had been by the death of Rin. He waited for this child to speak, interested in what he could be here for. He glanced back down at the infant next to him in a crib, still wondering what he should do with the now orphaned child. He sighed inwardly, not seeing an easy nor ideal solution. Hokage-sama, Kakashi began softly. What will happen to Minato-sensei's baby? The young ninja inquired. Hiruzen looked back up at him, surprised. He didn't expect the young teen to approach him with anything regarding his now resting sensei, knowing he usually suffered alone with his feelings. Oftentimes sitting at the memorial like a stone himself. I have been trying to decide that myself. There are no other family members left from either Minato or Kushina's family in the village. I want to take care of him, Kakashi blurted. Hiruzen stared at Kakashi, clearly shocked by the admission. Kakashi, you're only 13, how could I expect you to take care of an infant? Hokage-sama, he was my sensei's baby. I was supposed to protect him and Kushina. Kakashi pleaded, it's my duty to take care of him. He voiced stubbornly, already determined to take on this task. Hiruzen could understand the sense of responsibility the boy felt, even if it wasn't his fault. Kakashi had always been a loyal shinobi even if he was a bit cold and detached. Kakashi, it is not your fault either of them died, do not need to try and make up for anything. Kakashi shook his head. I want to honor him by caring for his child, Hokage-sama. I'm the closest thing he has to family left. The Anbu captain had already decided this within himself. It was the whole reason for coming here. If Naruto had any kind of family, his father's last living student was the closest thing left. He deserved to have some kind family and be raised by someone who cared. It was what his parents would have wished for. It was his responsibility to take care of him and protect him, it always would have been. It was his duty as the surviving member of his team. Hiruzen let out a heavy breath. You do know you cannot remain in Anbu, and care for Naruto, right? At least not until he is older or you find someone to look after him while you go on missions. Minato-sensei had already been urging me to take a break. But I think he really wanted me to leave Anbu. Kakashi nodded softly. Where is he? Hiruzen smiled, already seeing the will of fire pass from Yondaime to his student. Why, he is actually right here, but he's asleep. The returned Hokage bent down below his desk and carefully lifted the blanket-swaddled child from a crib. Kakashi stepped forward, looking at him once more in awe. He looks just like sensei. Hiruzen nodded. Take good care of him, Kakashi. He passed the infant over to the silver-haired nin. Know that you are not alone. He ruffled the silver strands, much to Kakashi's dislike as he frowned up at his superior. Minato-sensei told me that once. Hiruzen gave him a sad smile. He was a good leader that cared deeply for his people as a Hokage should. But even with his absence, and for the absence of your team, you are never alone, Kakashi. I can see that the will of fire burns brightly within, passed on from him to you, and his son. He pointed to Naruto. You'll always have Naruto, as well as the other ninja in the village. Kakashi nodded softly, not really believing he wanted to be close to anyone else again. One more thing, Kakashi. His voice became more stern now. He should not know he is the fourth son, and this was his own request. No child should ever believe they are the reason for their parents' death. He will find out when the time is right. But, Kakashi looked down at Naruto. He should know all about Minato-sensei. Kakashi countered. Hiruzen smiled. You can tell him about him as your past sensei and beloved Hokage. But he need not know that he was his father. Kakashi stared at him in disbelief, holding Naruto tightly. Also, be aware that the people of this village will not be fond of him, because it is known he holds the 9 tails within him and they fear it. Such is the life of many Jinchuriki. He wanted Naruto to be known as a hero for saving the village, but after the destruction and everything people lost, I fear that it will not happen. I've tried to reason with some of them, but they are grief-stricken. It's hard to tell if it will ever change. The Sandaime said sadly. Kakashi nodded softly. I'll do as you say even though I disagree with it, only because I trust you would do what is right as the past and now return Hokage. He spoke solemnly. The Sandaime watched the child a moment, thinking of his words. I care for the people of this village just as much as you care for that baby in your arms, and I do my best to do right by them, Kakashi. I understand, Hokage-sama. Kakashi left the office as his superior nodded to him. Naruto woke up as he descended the stairs and instantly began to cry, the wails echoing through the halls. Kakashi cradled him in his arms and tried to sway softly. Naruto, it's okay. You're with me now, Kakashi. Kakashi tried to console him. He remembered Kushina telling him towards the end of the pregnancy that babies can hear voices. Do you recognize my voice, Naruto? He wondered aloud softly. I never did talk much, so probably not, huh? He laughed nervously. He made it to the bottom of the steps and walked through the village, beginning to think of what things he needed to gather to start raising a baby. Perhaps I should have asked for the things Minato and Kushina had already had ready for Naruto. He sighed. Kakashi. A red-eyed girl called from his left, Asuma and Guy trailing behind her. Oh my gosh, is that Naruto? She exclaimed and ran towards him faster. Kakashi nodded softly. Yes, I just brought him from the Hokage Tower. I decided I should be the one to care for him, because I was Minato's student, and therefore his last surviving family. That's so noble of you, Kakashi. You're going to be a dad now. Guy gushed. Do you even have baby stuff at home, Kakashi? Kurenai asked. Kakashi did an eye crinkle, trying to push his feelings of sadness down. No, I was shopping for it at this moment actually. Why didn't Dad just give you the stuff the Yondaime had? Asuma asked, the distaste towards his father's lack of helpfulness clear. Kurenai shook her head. No matter, we can get some now. She said, trying to steer the conversation away from negativity. Can I hold him? Kakashi hesitated. I guess, but be careful. He's so little. He cautiously passed Naruto to the black-haired girl just the same as the elder Sarutobi has passed the baby to himself. Kurenai giggled and cooed at the infant now in her arms. You probably don't even know the first thing about caring for kids, do you, Kakashi? Let's just get the things. I know I need a place for him to sleep in that weird powder stuff that Kushina had bought in the market one day while I was watching after her. Kurenai laughed. You mean formula. You also need bottles and diapers, silly. She turned around and headed towards the domestic area of the market district. Come on, this way. Kakashi followed her with a look of indifference, thinking he wasn't very silly at all. He just wanted to do what was right. Taking care of a baby was definitely far from his ideal way of life, but he felt it was his duty to honor his now-dead sensei by raising his child. He couldn't protect Kushina like he was supposed to, but he would do his best to keep Naruto safe for the rest of his life. Not that he would ever voice that to his peers. He did appreciate Kurenai automatically helping, as he really didn't know the first thing about babies other than that they cried a lot, which was annoying. He glanced at the rest of the group, noting they all had been along his side trying to protect the village from the fox, unbeknownst the truth behind the matter. He knew they cared about the village and that they would always be good to Naruto. The Hokage says he can't know that Minato-sensei was his father. Kakashi mumbled. Kurenai nodded. It's better he grows up to be his own person, not wanting to fill those kinds of shoes. Plus, who wants to grow up blaming themselves for their parents' death? Kurenai mused as she motioned towards a crib that was cheap, making Asuma carry it as Kakashi paid for it. Kakashi frowned, still not feeling entirely okay with the idea. What am I supposed to tell him? Tell him his parents died protecting this village as amazing and gallant shinobi. That they were amazing ninjas, and they loved him. Guy cried out passionately, as if it were obvious. They continued on, Kurenai making sure all the necessary items were bought as she carried Naruto through the market, and they carried all the purchased items back to Kakashi's place. The boys left, leaving Kurenai and Kakashi in his apartment. I think Minato wouldn't have trusted anyone else to care for his son, Kakashi. I'm sure he'd be proud and grateful that you stepped up to take him in, especially at such a young age. Kurenai smiled softly. Kakashi nodded as he laid Naruto down on the couch. He began setting the things up throughout his house. Putting the high chair in the tiled part of his small space that was where the kitchen was and small dining table. He put the crib next to his bed. Kurenai folded up some of the clothes they bought and put them on top of his dresser. She also put away the formula and bottles he bought in the cupboards. You know you're going to have to get clothing with the Uzumaki clan symbol on it made for him when he's a little older. Naruto was quiet now, his eyes following them from the couch as they moved about. He seemed curious as he gazed at them. How do I know when he's hungry? Kakashi pondered. Babies normally cry when anything is wrong, or for no reason at all. Kurenai shrugged. You can try and feed him now, that shopping took a while, so I'm sure it's been some time since he was last fed at the Hokage Tower. She walked Kakashi through how to make a bottle for him, and Kakashi picked Naruto up and sat on the couch, beginning to feed the bottle to Naruto. He drank it eagerly and Kakashi smiled slightly as he stared down at him. I'll leave now that you got everything set up. But if you need help, just let me know. Kakashi nodded, not looking up from Naruto as she left his apartment. It has been weeks now since Kakashi had adopted Naruto. Right now, he lay with Naruto cradled in one arm as he held the book he was reading with another. Just as he began to get to the climax of his plot, Naruto began crying. Naruto, hey, it's okay. Shish, it's okay. Kakashi put his book down instantly and took the baby into his arms fully. He checked his diaper, nothing. The silver-haired nin sat perplexed, knowing he had just fed him 20 minutes ago. He cradled Naruto and tried to talk to him and calm him down. It was no use. You're gonna make some ninjas someday if you keep crying like this. He huffed out. He always wished he had seen someone's parents, even one person. He felt antsy, he hadn't been on a single mission for over a month. Just how was he supposed to do this? He was really beginning to wonder if this was really the right decision after all. Minato and Kushina really love you, Naruto. I hope one day you know he was your father and just how much he did to save you. Kakashi sighed and hugged him tight, remembering Kurenai saying something about babies wanting closeness. He rocked him gently and nuzzled his head with his nose. I'll never let anything bad happen to you, Naruto. You're gonna be safe. He laid down and held Naruto close, continuing to try and talk to him. This was never what he thought he'd be doing in the sense of duty, but nothing worth doing was easy, right? Naruto finally began to sniffle and hiccup, his cries stopping. Kakashi wiped his face with the end of his sleeve. See, everything is okay. He gave the boy an eye crease, and Naruto giggled in response. He thought a moment before he dressed Naruto in some warmer clothes. Let's go for a walk, Naruto, he said softly as they left the apartment. He walked through the village and to the memorial site where all the graveyards were, finding one of his teammates' headstones. Hey, Rin, I haven't been by in a while. I'm sorry for that. Some bad things happened again. Just my luck, right? He sighed softly, cleaning her grave with his free hand, keeping Naruto cradled tightly in his other arm. Our sensei died. It's just me left from our team. Well, and Naruto now. I'm taking care of him now. Taking care of people has always been more your thing than mine. Kakashi glanced at Naruto. It's far from easy and sometimes it feels like it's impossible. He laughed. He cries a lot and sometimes I can't get him to stop. He looked back at Rin's grave, wishing he had stopped to get her flowers. He's Jinchuriki just like you had been made into. His eyes threatened to well with tears as his memories resurfaced. He looks just like Sensei. Maybe one day he'll be Hokage like him too, huh? He stood back up now, chuckling at the thought. Until next visit, Rin. Kakashi. The silver-haired nin turned to find the Hokage standing a little distance away from him, at the gravesite of the Hokages. He strided over to him quickly, looking to Minato's grave momentarily, before looking back to Hiruzen. Yes, Hokage-sama. I hear you've become quite the nurturer from my son. The elder smiled. Kakashi rubbed the back of his neck nervously. I've been doing my best. Kurenai has given me some tips here and there. His leader nodded. I'm glad to hear that. I recall telling you that you were not alone, did I not? Kakashi shrugged. I guess so. He stared at Naruto. Was there something you needed from me, Hokage-sama? He watched the boy a moment, noticing he seemed to have a newfound purpose in life, other than just existing as a shinobi tool to the village. He wished Minato could have seen the change in his melancholy student. Actually, there was something I needed to tell you. Kakashi nodded, indicating he was listening. When the fourth did the jutsu to seal the 9 tails in Naruto, he sent the key to the seal out with one of his toad summons. Do you know who Jiraiya is, Kakashi? He nodded softly. He was Minato-sensei's sensei. And you were his sensei, right? And he also wrote the book that Naruto's name comes from. I read it, the character reminded me a lot of Obito. Yes, that is all true, my child. I received word that Jiraiya will be coming here in some time. When he comes, I will send him to you to see Naruto. Minato had used his toads to send him the key to the seal, and Jiraiya is his godfather. He may want to help you or just pop up every so often. Kakashi nodded. Okay, I've met him before. That was all, my child. You're doing well taking care of him, he looks healthy. Thank you, Hokage-sama.